Characters that parallel each other in media are something that have been around for a really long time. For those who don't know, parallel characters, or mirror characters, are characters who share certain similarities with each other. This can pertain to their personalities, backgrounds, or motivations. These similarities can be used to highlight the differences of their decisions despite the similarities between them. An example of a character parallel is Sonic and Shadow, who both have been through tremendous loss in their lives but went down completely different paths and ended up in completely different places by the time of the third movie. Ninjago obviously isn't shy to parallels. They've done a couple such as Kai and Chen in Season 4, who both express jealousy towards others who have more power, Jay and Nadekar in Season 6, who are both motivated by the pursuit of Nia, or even Harumi and Lloyd, who are united by the loss of their parents at a young age. Point is, Ninjago has a history of trying, and sometimes failing, parallels between characters, but my favourite one that the original show did has to be the one between Lloyd and Vex. To briefly recap, Lloyd was put through the ringer during the Oni trilogy and came out of it a completely different person because of Harumi's betrayal and his father's revival. He became rather shut off from the rest of the world and doesn't exactly follow the more to life than surviving moral he hammered into his father during Season 10. During the Fire chapter, Lloyd is faced with a mirror of dread, which shows whoever looks into it their greatest fear. Looking into the mirror, Lloyd sees his father, who is overall an emotionally numb and shut-off person for most of the Oni trilogy, and that's exactly his worst fear, becoming isolated and shut off emotionally like his father is. Lloyd ends up embarking on the journey to find Zane alone, being another demonstration of him being shut off from the rest of the team, choosing to brave the desolate wasteland alone. Eventually, he meets a wolf who he ends up confiding in, digging into his trauma and getting it off of his chest. As we all know, this wolf ends up being Akita, a formling on her own, seeking revenge on the Emperor. Upon learning this, Lloyd is incredibly hurt and considers leaving an injured Akita behind for betraying his trust, showing that he is at risk of becoming what he sees as his father, an uncaring and emotionally numb individual, seeking to protect himself from any harm by not trusting anyone. Lloyd ends up helping Akita with her injuries and decides to see the good in her and to trust her, allowing her to help him on his quest to save his friend Zane. This trust that Lloyd is now able to place in others is incredibly important for the next part of the season, where he must save Zane from his amnesiac state and bring him back from being the Ice Emperor. Lloyd does this by constantly reminding Zane of who he is and trusting that the good man he knew is somewhere deep down, and that he can bring Zane back from this horrible amnesiac state he's currently trapped in. Despite the horrible situation Zane is in, Lloyd still chooses to see the good in him and move past his mistrust that he developed during the Oni trilogy. Him being able to trust is representative of the fact that he will not end up like his main parallel this season, General Vex, who I personally think is one of Ninjago's most interesting villains. Vex is a really interesting villain to me because he serves as a dark mirror to what Lloyd could become if he continues down this path. During the last Reformlings episode, we learned that Vex is extremely mistrusting towards others and refuses to see any good in them. Despite constant reassurance and being treated relatively well by the other inhabitants of the realm, he swears revenge and stays the same closed-off and untrusting individual. Upon finding Zane and erasing his memories, he uses him as a tool to exact his revenge against everyone who he feels has wronged him, enslaving the samurai and attacking the Formling village. His mistrust and pessimistic vision of the world is what eventually shapes the Netherrealm into the cold, harsh, and unrelenting realm that we see in the Ice chapter, and serves as a really good outward reflection of who Vex is as a character, which in turn reflects on Lloyd going after Zane by himself. Lloyd and Vex both very clearly share the fact that they're both individuals who don't trust others due to their past trauma and experiences. As said before, parallels are done to highlight the different choices characters make. In this case, Vex chose to go down the path of revenge and hatred in full, letting his mistrust consume him. Lloyd, on the other hand, moved past his mistrust and past experiences to try and help Akita and overcame his problem of seeing the worst in people by continually believing that Zane is a good person deep down. Season 11 being the story that shows Lloyd coming to grips with his trauma and moving past it is a really interesting and well executed story in my opinion, and serves as a really good epilogue to the Oni trilogy. However, Season 11's parallels don't stop there, because Akita serves as a parallel to both of these characters in a way. Akita's story starts off with her being incredibly worried about ending up like Vex, and doesn't want to be the same spiteful monster he is. After she overcomes her fears by obtaining her animal form, she finds her entire village ravaged by Vex and the Ice Emperor. When she meets Lloyd, she states that she seeks revenge against the Ice Emperor and wants to avenge her people and brother, who is presumed dead at this time. In the final few episodes, Akita gets incredibly preoccupied with her revenge and tries to take Zane's life, which would have presumably taken her down a very dark path of revenge, one that Lloyd snaps her out of. Her paralleling Vex at the start is a really interesting story beat, what with her not wanting to end up like him, and her dynamic with Lloyd is super compelling because of their mutual aid in overcoming trauma. Lloyd and Akita both having insanely messed up pasts that they seek to right, and that them mutually helping each other overcome it is really, really compelling in my opinion, and again, I think does a really great job of continuing the Oni trilogy in a compelling manner for Lloyd, and I think Akita in her own right is a really interesting character that deserves a lot more praise than she currently gets. All in all, I think this season handles its character parallels in a really interesting and compelling way, and is definitely one of the most consistently good Dark Mirror stories that Ninjago has told up till this point, and was definitely the highlight of this season for me. As you might have seen, this is my first video, so any pointers and hints you could give me on what I could improve upon if I were to make another one of these would be greatly appreciated. Because I don't know if I'll actually make more of these consistently, so yeah. But thanks for watching anyways, and have a nice day. You know, if Season 11 has so many dark mirrors, why don't they just clean them?
You feel tired to look at yourself.